this computer. Let's get some webcams going, eh?
Yeah, right. Just a second.
Start video. So yesterday we completed the iEstimate takeoff and went through marking up the plans with a few notes that we'll address at the council construction detailing stage, which I'm just loading up the plans and the Excel now. Right at the end we were discussing the eave width and the implications that the steel frame and the thermal break has on the eave sheet itself. It made me start to question this section here that we'd measured previously as 940, and I still think we're going to have to leave that as a 1200 eave sheet. Unfortunately, it's just so touch and go that the actual eave's been drawn as 640 including fascia. The eave really only clips in about 10, so you should be able to deduct 30 mil off that. But all it takes is this being out of position by 10 mil, or the post being set too far forward or too far back, and we could end up with it just not working. Ideally, the posts will be exactly where shown and will be set forward, or potentially they could be set back and we'd end up with a narrower eave sheet. I think we're better off, just for safety purposes though, leaving it at 1200, and they can cut it down if they need to. So we'd been through this. There's obviously a bit more detail we require as we go through the Build Quantities. We put a few notes here about increasing the garage door width. This note is noted as a Versa-like ceiling, but we need the actual layout. Now I've been putting together some Todoist, which is the internal to-do list software we use to delegate tasks to people and to keep track of our work. I've been putting together a bit of a template here in the background that describes effectively the process of a post-contract estimator from start to finish. The first task you do is you go into the job and you split the building contract into individual files and name them appropriately. So the individual files need to be uploaded because many of them are sent to trades, some are sent with quote requests, some need to go out with purchase orders, and so on and so forth. So there's no real merit having a big building contract there if we're only interested in a couple of individual pieces. And it's not really appropriate to necessarily be telling our random trades what a client's paid for a home. So we don't want them to be getting the whole building contract either. So if we come here into the contracts folder, we've got a title search, owner consent. We appear to have an unsigned version of the building contract here, unless this is the signed version. Excellent. All right, so we want to rename this first and foremost. Now, I'm just looking at my Todoist here. I actually don't have naming the building contract because usually that's done by somebody else. But if we just go add task above, ensure building contract is named correctly, and an example. Job number, building contract. And so that's the standard naming convention. It's the day, month, year, underscore client's surname. If there's multiples, it's surname and surname with the and symbol, underscore job number, underscore building, underscore contract, underscore signed. So what we want to do is we want to go into this job here and rename this file here being the signed building contract to what it should be. The date is the date it is actually signed, which should be stated right there, the 28th of the 5th. So 280520 underscore Bennett. Now, if they're the same surname, you don't need to write it twice. It's just Bennett. CH190051 building contract signed. Some of these are just files that need to be moved off. They're just documents that ended up going into the building contract, but that are already in the building contract. So we want to open this now and we want to split it into the individual files. Now we want an addendum A, a designer specification, and if there is a fast track color scheme, we want the color selection document out of it as well. If they're not fast tracked, then we need to get the color selection document underway. So the designer specification is immediately after the HIA body of the contract. So we just come down here and it's not there. So it must have been an individual file, probably this one here, designer specification. And he's got the designer specification and all the addendums included all together. So we're just going to extract pages start here. This is the cover page, new home. So we'll start on page 3 and come down to page 21. And then we want the addendum A, which is 22 through 27. And then we want to name them as per the notes there on the comments. So this one would be designer specification, and this one is addendum A. And then we want to drop them in the contracts folder. Now it's quite important because when we get to sending quote requests, some of the quote requests will be looking specifically for that addendum A underscore signed naming convention, and some will also be looking for the designer specification. So if those files aren't there, they won't be sent to the trades and they won't have the full scope to quote on. We want to make sure this preliminary agreement is all signed correctly and also dated 29th of the 5th. So 29th of the 5th, 20, Bennett, preliminary agreement signed. Now these are presumably the client's application forms and contract forms for their certification. These should actually be in the council related folder. That's just rubbish. And that's old now. So we've now just tidied up the contracts folder. We've got exactly the information we want. Save. So if I, for example, go duplicate, yes, and rename this, move this to my other project. And this is actually not contract, it's council stage. CH90051 and Coffs Coast. Did that just disappear? Oh, it somehow jumped back here. Must have pressed save too quickly. And all of the tasks have disappeared. Something's happened. Let's delete that and we'll try this again. Duplicate, duplicate, everything's come with it. Let's rename it first. Council CH951 Coast. Save. It's all still there, which is good. And now let's try and move it. There we go. Must have been too quick. It's gone again. What is going on? It's really, really not liking this, is it? We might have to leave it for a minute. Maybe I'm just trying to do it too fast and the refresh is causing issues. Let's just leave it here for a minute first before we start moving anything. So we've renamed the building contract. We've done the addendum A, we've done the designer specification. Now the color selection document was not there because this client is actually a non-fast track client. So they haven't taken a discount to get the colors provided for them.
One question, Shane, like you will get the color selection document only if it is a fast track document.
So if it's a fast track, it will be included in the building contract itself. So probably 50% of our clients opt for a fast track scheme discount where it's like a 3-page document that details all the colors and inclusions in their home. And it's put together by a professional color consultant and they choose from one of 6 schemes. And if they like that color scheme, that's the kind of scheme they want. They know that the internal colors are going to work, the external colors are going to work. It's been put together to work. And so they take a discount and they choose that document. And that document goes into the building contract immediately after the addendum A. So it would be sitting, there'd be a note here saying fast track discount, blah, 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 on the last page of the addendum. And then you'd find the fast track color scheme appendiced immediately behind the addendum A.
Right.
Now this is not one of those jobs. This client has not taken a fast track discount and therefore it's not showing up there. One moment, I just got to take a phone call. All right, so the last thing I mentioned was that I was talking about our fast track discount structure. So we offer a service called Fast Track where we've got one of 6 at this point in time pre-set up color schemes. So a professional color consultant has sat down and said, this color works with that color and works with that color. And we've come up with a scheme for the home, with set names, coastal drift, sandy desert, things like that. And they're all built around a common color theme. We've got darks and whites and in the middle. And some of our clients, probably 50 to 60% of that, take a discount and select one of those color schemes, and it makes the estimation process really, really quick because everything's documented from day one. You know what the walls are going to be, you know what the bricks are going to be, the roof. That's it. It's job done. There's no variations to colors. What they've signed is what they get. Now, when they take that discount, they make the selection of their fast track pre-contract preparation. And so that actual fast track scheme is bound into the building contract immediately after the addendum A. And there'll be a note here on the bottom of the addendum A talking about a fast track discount. And then before you get to the contract addendum B, you'll find that there's 3 or 4 pages of a color selection document attached detailing colors of walls, colors of kitchen tops, colors of floors, clotheslines, you name it. Now, this client is a more custom client, custom home, custom colors. They're building their forever home. They're not a first or second home buyer. They're probably a third or fourth home buyer. They're after a little bit more of a customized service, and so they've actually met with a color consultant and done a consultation specific to their needs. I don't have a copy of that. I know the consultation's been done and it logically should have been uploaded to the job in the contracts folder and the task marked off. The request has been put through, but the receipt of the color selection hasn't been marked off and it hasn't been put on the job. So I need to pursue Cameron for that separately. because it's going to have a slight impact on the items that we obviously include in the bill of quantities. So I'm just texting Cameron now off screen. Where is... So just pursuing Cameron for that separately, and hopefully while we're doing this, he'll get it uploaded to the job. So the consultation has taken place, and that's all sorted. I think there might have been a couple of minor variations which Cameron's attending to directly, as in he's preparing those cost variations to the client. And yeah, so we can't mark off this item here, the color selection document, just yet because we're still waiting on it to be uploaded. Once it's been uploaded, we can check that it's been named correctly. And if we click into this here and look at the comments, I've described how it's meant to be named: date, surname, job number, color underscore selection underscore document underscore CSD underscore signed. And it's specifically looking for that part just there for its naming conventions. So inside of these templates, I've given example naming conventions so that you guys can follow those things through. So we'll have to leave this aside. The next step, when you first assigned a job, before you even do iEstimate, we're obviously taking a step back pre iEstimate at this stage. You want to make sure all of the business contacts on the job are entered and are correct, because notifications are automatically issued by Gyro. When one person completes a task, the next appropriate person is notified through their dashboard and through emails. And so if you don't have the correct business contacts entered on the job, you could complete something or request something from somebody else, and if they're not in there, they may not get that notification, the job just stalls. So it's very important that we check the business contacts and make sure they're all set up from the start. So in this instance here, I've got the estimator equals Shane, which for all intents and purposes, when Sachin and Sejo are doing it, that's who it would be assigned to. Arjun, when you're doing work directly for Cameron without my involvement, you would be assigning yourself as the estimator. I think probably on these first two jobs though, I think they're still to be assigned to me because I'm generally overseeing it. So if we were to come here to business contacts, got a tab here. Currently it's assigned to you. I'm just going to press this X and assign it to myself. Integrity Franchising, Shane Herbst, and it automatically defaults to estimator. We've got Wayne as the sales consultant and the project manager. Excellent. We've got the geotech set. We've got the contract administrator being Cameron and designer. Now, the obvious person that's missing to me looking at the to-doist list, we've got estimator sorted. We've got supervisor sorted. The color consultant hasn't been marked off, hasn't been put in, which means that when Cameron put in request color selection, the color consultant wouldn't have received that email. So we want to make sure that that's put in. Now, the color consultant on this job was Angela Leet. And obviously you guys will familiarize this as you go by. And once again, she's already defaulted to color consultant. So we can mark that off. Now, engineer's missing. And you'll see here in the notes that sometimes it's Intrax consulting engineers. It's probably who it's going to be 95% of the time. Intrax. Now, Arjun, because you've got limited access to databases, you'll only ever see your own company here. You'll see far fewer names. Sejo, Sachin, and I have access to many franchises databases, so they're all collated together. So Sachin, when we are doing this process, you need to make sure that you're assigning the person from the correct database, because it's entirely possible that a lot of our franchisees will have the same companies. So you need to assign the individual contact in the correct database. So we're in the Coffs Coast database, so we want to be looking for the group name Coffs Coast. And that's who we want to assign for engineering. If you assign one of these other people, there'll be an issue where the contacts won't be able to access across database, and there'll be some challenges there. When it comes to assigning ourselves as contacts. We live under the group name Integrity Franchising. And so, if I type in Sachin, Integrity Franchising, that's where you live. So that's the one you always use. When it comes to assigning people from other databases, you've got to make sure you're choosing from their database. So Coffs Coast, and see how that's got a red flag. So that's saying that this person there's a duplicate sales consultant on the job. So we just want to click here and change that to engineer. And now the red exclamation's gone away. Now we can also partly fix that by setting up this contact to default to engineer. And we can do that from the business contacts. That's just a little drop down box that says assume this is the default contact when adding the person. So I'm just going to look for that Intrax contact in the master business contacts, find their little drop down box and set them up to default to engineer, which as I said previously, because I've got access to like 20 or so databases and 10, 15,000 business contacts, it takes a few moments to load. For Arjun, you'd probably click on that and it'd load almost instantly. Any moment now, Bessie. There we go. Intrax. Now, the trick with this screen here is it doesn't actually show you the company that these people belong to as in the database initially. For Arjun, that doesn't matter because he's only ever going to see his own people. For Sachin and for Sejo, we right click here in this blue section. We go column chooser and we just want to drag the group in. And now the group list is available and we can sort them by group. So now we can come down and we can find Intrax in Coffs Coast. We know 100% this is the Intrax from Coffs Coast. Come through to the employees, default contact type, and we'll set that to engineer. And now in the future, if in Arjun's database, if Intrax is added to a job, they will automatically come in as the engineer. All right, so we can mark off the engineer now, and also the geotech, I believe, was already there. And the designer being Cameron, so we can mark that off. So we've been through and we've assigned all the business contacts, so we can mark that off. Now the salesman to estimate a brief, if you look here in the comments, Shane to phone the franchisee and discuss the job. So I'm the client-facing individual. So the first thing, before you guys get too far into the job, once you've assigned the business contacts and the job's technically afoot, I pick up the phone, I call the franchisee, or I wander in next door and talk to Cameron and say, tell me what's going on with this job. Is there anything I need to know about this client? What's the status of the job? Is there any challenges with the client? What are their expectations? What's their lead time? What's your expectation about start date? Are you putting it through council? Is the owner putting it through council? Effectively, all the questions I need to ask then to give you guys the information to progress the job. There's no point, for example, if the owner's managing the whole council process and they're supplying their own plans, well, then we don't need to worry about doing council plan markups or worrying about council compliance or any of that because it's just not our problem. So it's about getting a brief for the job. Now, Cameron and I have had that brief this morning where he told me the status of the job. He told me it's waiting on design approval. I know he's intending to put it through a complying development process, which is a fast track approval. And, they want to get this thing built as soon as possible. So I can mark that off as being complete. Now, the council plan markups, as you can see here, I've put together some standard items that you would mark up on the plans when going through to do your council markups. So the way the estimation process works is a set of contract plans are prepared by the draftsman. Those contract plans are signed by the client, but the contract plans are effectively concept only. They've got limited dimensioning, limited detail. Effectively, they're in a hypothetical sense what we're intending to build, but lacking the information to actually deliver that outcome. So the next stage is to develop the council plans. The council plans will have all of your council compliance issues on it. So it'll include all the stuff that the council requires to know, but it'll also include all the stuff that you want on the plans for estimation purposes to ensure that what you're estimating is delivered. An example being your widened eave sheets, your lift-off hinges, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each of these items individually, and we're going to compare the council set of plans that Cameron's provided us against this scheduled list of what we would ideally like to see on the plans, and then we'll notate what's missing and get that corrected. So the round name, what that's mentioning there is it's talking about this here. So obviously you would normally be marking up a set of contract plans. So what you're doing is just writing council. In this instance, it already says council, so we can just mark that off as being complete. The north point, so we want it to show on the site plan the north point, because that's very, very specific to council and their compliance. Now, I can't see the north point on these plans. Can you guys? Either it's been missed by the surveyor or potentially it's not been imported. But that's a critical issue. That's going to cause them issues of trying to get council approval. So north point missing. North point missing. Now, fortunately for me, I've been to this site. I've walked the site. I'm familiar with where it is. And if I had to guess, I would say north is like almost exactly like that. So the markups I'm going to be doing next are based upon that assumption, but may not actually be the case. Cameron will adjust that when he puts the north point on and has the full information. So the front elevation is, so there we go. We'll just come back to the mark. We'll mark that off. Oh, let's check that first. Undo. Come back. Hatch the widened eaves. So we discussed that these eaves here would end up being 1200 wide. So what we're just going to do is we're going to come through and just put a bit of color on them all the way out to the red line. And we're going to write 1200 wide eave sheets. And through the front here, we worked out we were going to be able to get away with 750, assuming it stays a steel frame, so we shouldn't need to change anything there. And we need another section up here. Now, the designers have all this on their checklist, but in my experience, it doesn't matter how many checklists you give a designer. If they just don't feel like doing it, they won't. So as the estimator, you are solely responsible for what's delivered. The outcome sits on your shoulders. When the supervisor calls up and says, why have I got these sheets here? They don't make any sense to me. What are they for? You can say, look at your plans. So it's very important as the estimator that you take leadership and you stand strong and say, at the end of the day, I'm responsible. You as the designer, you're my hands. Let me use my brain. You use your hands. Draw what I tell you to draw. That's effectively it at the end of the day. And that's the approach I've always taken. If I want a note on a plan and I think it should be there, I don't care what the draftsman thinks. It should be there. So now for you, Arjun, that's a bit harder because technically your draftsman's your boss. For the rest of us, it's not the case.
Cameron is the one who is doing.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So hatch the widened eave sheets. So that's fine. We can mark that off. Versalux set out. So we don't need to provide the set out. We don't need to say what it is. We just need to remind the draftsman that they need to do it. So layout for Versalux, layout for Versalux. Lift off hinges. Now to hatch the drawer location on vanity units. Now in this house, the actual entire cabinetry is all being provided by the homeowner. That they are the cabinet maker, so we don't need to worry about it in this instance, because essentially he's going to build whatever he builds. We're just putting in the walls and the frames and the plasterboard, and he's going to put whatever he wants wherever he likes. We don't need to order that product, so we can just skip that. I mean, if you want to first, you can put a note in saying owner supplied cabinetry not required, and that way if you're ever asked about the question, you can say, well, have a look in the comments. I'll mark that off. Check the cooktop noted matches the addendum A, and if no upgrade is specified in the addendum A, say gas cooktop and electric UBO, means underbench oven. Gas cooktop, electric UBO, perfect. Check the smoke alarms comply with the NCC. Now this is, I guess, quite a challenging one, because the interpretation of the NCC is usually kind of left to the draftsman, but it's about just making sure that generally there is smoke alarms shown. Now I'm looking at these plans and I can't see any smoke alarms at all, which is a big issue. Because the draftsman's completely overlooked this, which firstly would mean that the house wouldn't be able to be complying development approved, because it's got to pass both council and building laws. But it also means that when it came time for you to do your estimating, without the layout, you don't know the quantity, and you could end up also leaving it out, and then we've got a bit of an issue. The general rule of thumb for smoke alarms in the NCC is that you want a smoke alarm effectively per hallway where there's, I guess, a risk of a fire starting. In New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland has taken it the next level, where they actually make you put a smoke alarm in every single bedroom as well. So, and usually that smoke alarm would be placed just inside the doorway. So if this was in Queensland, you'd have smoke alarm here, you'd have a smoke alarm there, and then you'd also have one in this hallway, and probably one in this hallway here as well, service in this bedroom. Or if Cameron wanted to, he could place it here centrally, and it would then service both. If there was 2 bedrooms down here, then you'd probably put one there and one there, but it all just depends on how visually prominent they are and what the ceiling is doing at that point. So in reality, I'd expect Cameron's probably going to put a smoke alarm here, and a second one probably about here, which is going to service bed 2, bed 3, and bed 4. So there's no reason why this house would need more than 2 smoke alarms, but it's just about quickly checking. If there was smoke alarms shown, you just want to have a quick look at the location of them, whether or not it necessarily makes sense, whether or not it works, whether or not the house should potentially have a second one just in case. Because some of the narrower, longer hallway houses where you just got a kitchen at one end and all the bedrooms at the other, they might just put one smoke alarm in the hallway as you're leaving the kitchen. Whereas ideally, you'd maybe put a second one up the other end in case a fire originates from the opposing end of the house. These smoke alarms being overlooked is a bit of an issue that needs addressing. Note the type of the robe and linen doors, i.e. if mirror, they say mirror. If unspecified in the addendum A, note as vinyl. It's probably worded poorly, but I understood what I meant at 9 o'clock at night writing that. Essentially, if the addendum A says that the clients have upgraded to mirror robes, then you want the plans to also have the word mirror on them. So in this instance, these houses don't have any robes at all. They're just an opening. So we don't need to worry about that. But normally this would be an actual door, and you just put a little note here and you'd say mirror. And then the draftsman would update this note and it would say 21-18 mirror. If it's not noted in the color selection as being upgraded and it's not noted in the addendum A as being upgraded, then the default text should just say vinyl. And you just go vinyl, vinyl, etc., etc. As I said, in this instance, we can completely omit that because this house doesn't have any. So we'll just put a note in here. No robe doors. Square set opening provided for owner to do doors after handover. Add comment and mark it off. Check robe doors as specified at 200mm increments. Oh, that shouldn't have a random J in it. I better fix that in the template. Template, expand. Where was that? Shoot. Once again, we've got exactly the same situation. We're not providing the robes. It's just an opening. The owner's providing whatever he likes in that space after the fact. It could be mirror robes, could be something he makes himself. I don't know. Square set openings for owner supplied doors. This does not apply. Add the comment, mark it off. Ensure all cavity sliding door units have walls noted as 90mm wall to CSD, unless all wall frames are already 90mm. Also double check the wall is actually 90mm, not left as 70mm with a conflicting note. So we had a circumstance just recently on a Sydney job where there was 3 cavity sliders in the house. There was a note on all 3 of them saying 90mm wall to CSD, and only one of the walls was actually changed to 90mm. So the 2 others were left as 70s. Fortunately, it was picked up by the drafting team providing the frame and truss, and they provided 90mm wall frames. But the problem was the plan we provided to the carpenter for the room sizes didn't work, because suddenly some of these walls were 20mm larger than they were originally shown. So it took the carpenter a lot longer to mark out the house and do it, because we had conflicting information on the plans. Fortunately for us, like I said, the frame and truss provided 90mm wall frames. If they'd provided 70s, then we would have had some issues, and we would have had to have replaced the cavity sliding units and all the rest of it. Now for Arjun, Coast guys only do 90mm wall frames. They don't do 70 ever. So that's not really anything you need to worry about. You probably won't ever find that note on your plans, because your plans will always just be 90mm. So comment, all wall frames are 90mm already. Now, basics thermal schedule on the site plan, floor plan, and electrical plan specify what is included in the designer specification unless overwritten by the addendum A. So what that's referring to is the notes that we have to put on our plans before our consultants can stamp them to say that they're compliant with our state thermal requirements. We've got thermal in New South Wales, for example, we've got specific guidelines and targets we have to hit for power usage, water usage, and our thermal impact. So our homes have to be built, I guess, a little bit more passively, so they don't use too much heating and cooling, and so on and so forth. So Cameron's already got the notes here on the plans. On the elevation, and then he should also have a note here on the electrical plan, which he's missing. Basics / others notes. Stop. And there should also be one on the site plan as well, which he has got, being the site area, the amount landscaped. Now, I see he's shown this as 0 square meters, but it's clearly showing 200 square meters of turf. So that's probably not correct. There's a 79,000 litre Rhino above ground steel rainwater tank connected to all outlets. all fixtures to be 4-star rated except shower roses to be 3-star. So what that means is this house doesn't have mains water. It doesn't have a water meter. It doesn't have a water service running through the estate. The entire house is getting its water fed from this one tank. Usually what that'll say is it's just connected to, say, the laundry and one or two other locations. But because this is a rural site, it's slightly different. Pardon me. Living, garage, alfresco, conditioned, unconditioned. So he's got that note, but that note's wrong. He's got the note here on the elevations, which is fine. We just want to double check that these are consistent with the addendum A to make sure that they are indeed the correct notes. So close that, close that. Close that, close that, come back here to the job, addendum A, Control F, insulation. So they've got multi-tell blanket, they've got R2.5 external wall bats, and they've got R3.5 ceiling bats. And I think that was exactly what Cameron had noted, R2.5s, R3.5s, and multi-tell. So that looks good. The question is, he's just written external walls. He hasn't necessarily specified whether or not it's included to the garage. So we want to say excluding garage, just to make that abundantly clear to all involved. Except it actually should be this one here, being the wall bats. All right, so we can mark that off. Now the color schedule is required on the elevations. If the color selection is not yet available, just ask for the blank box to be provided to be filled out at the construction stage. So if we come down here to the elevations, Cameron has actually already pre-filled this information, presumably from the color selection document that he has. I'm not familiar with this C1 or N5. I don't know what that means. It's not a code or anything I'm familiar with. So we'll certainly circle back to that. I'd probably also have this hardy plank renamed to Newport cladding, given that's what it's actually called on the plans. You've got the downpipes, gutter, fascia and barge, roofing. Now, he's got the barge here, and are you guys familiar with the term barge? Can't hear it, either of you.
Nope, Shane, nope.
Nope.
No?
For the first time.
Do you know what the fascia is?
A patient gutter, like one that runs through the eave sheet's outer edge, right?
Yes, so the fascia is this 160, 180 mil tall piece that finishes off your roof sheet that your eave butts into. We looked at a detail on it yesterday. And then this piece here is the gutter, which obviously holds your water, which is fixed off to it. So when it runs in a horizontal fashion like this, it's called a fascia. When it runs at an angle like this, it's called a barge. And usually a barge doesn't have a gutter on it. It's to finish off gables or skillion roofs where you've got two different pitches. You've got your gutters on either end. You've got that piece that runs up the sides that finishes your roof. That's called a barge. So usually 9 times out of 10, your barge and your fascia color will be the same because they're joined. It would look pretty odd if they weren't. What Cameron hasn't addressed, though, is the barge capping. So on a barge, you actually have a flashing piece that's part of your roof that comes over the face of your barge that's called a barge capping, which I'm just going to pull up one on screen. Barge and barge capping. There's a really good picture. So in this instance, can you guys see my screen? See the picture of the roof?
Yep.
We can see, yep.
So in this instance here, you've got the horizontal piece, that's fascia. Then you've got this angled piece, which is known as the barge, as I said, which is normally done the same color. And then you've got this piece of flashing here, which is a bent bit of metal, which comes over the roof and returns down the face of the barge partially. That's quite a narrow fascia, but like barge capping, usually it comes down a little bit further, probably one more corrugation. And it's called your barge capping. Now, different clients will want that different colors. Some of them will want it to match the fascia and the barge and have the color come up over the top of the roof. So, and other clients want it to match the ridging and your roof and come down the front of your barge. It's actually, I guess it depends on the aesthetic you're going for, which color scheme you think looks best. Sometimes it's all the same color, so it doesn't matter. Other times, as I said, they do the opposing. In this instance here, it's actually not overly apparent, but it looks like they've brought the roof color down in like a rolled barge. It looks really interesting. That's your barge capping there that comes over the face. But it's very important that we know what that color is, because it has a bit of an impact. Certainly more so with tile roofs as well, where we still do the barge capping in aluminium. Sorry, in ColourBond. So what we want to do here is we want to add next to this roofing the question mark and slash barge capping question mark, because we need to know what we're actually ordering. And if they haven't covered off the barge capping in the color selection document, then we're going to want a selection done so that we make sure we don't order the wrong thing. Gutter, downpipes, Newport cladding, face brickwork, render, posts, windows, garage doors, rainwater tank. They seem to be covering off all of our external colors. Now, my only question is, the windows are noted as surf mist. I'm not necessarily 100% certain that it's actually a window color. It is not. Oh no, it is surf mist in a matte finish. So I'm just going to get this updated to say surf mist matte. So at the end of the day, the clients sign off on the construction plans prior to commencement. So it's very, very important that we cover off everything and get all this stuff checked, all this stuff signed, so that in the event we build the house and they come out and they say, this isn't what we want, we can say, well, not only did you sign it on a color selection document, you also signed it on your plans where it was clearly noted. So it's just about covering our bases. It also makes it a little bit simpler for some of our suppliers when they're tendering to see it specified on the plans. It reinforces that we've clearly thought about it. So we can mark off that. Articulation, joints, and schedule on the elevations. So are you guys familiar with articulation joints and their purpose and frequency?
We have seen on the plans actually AJs. On longer walls, usually there are AJs marked on it.
Yep.
So, really don't know the purpose actually. Maybe for stability or giving strength. Is it?
So brick veneer houses, the brickwork is non-load bearing, it's non-structural. The bricks themselves are just a facade. They sit in front to give the impression of a brick house, when in reality the entire structure is built out of timber trusses and sits on a timber frame. The brickwork itself is just held in place with the mortar and with ties like that are nailed or screwed back into the timber frame and set into the mortar joint, so that it's just sitting there. It's just a false facade. The issue with that is if you've got reactive soils, what can tend to happen is your ground underneath your slab will start to heave and fall with moisture content. And so that's why we design our slabs to resist that. But the problem is you can only resist it so much. What you need is also additional points that are designed to be weakened so that if a fault does try to occur, that fault can't transfer or can't continue. So you're probably familiar when it comes to doing driveways and the like. You pour a couple of meters of concrete and then you put like a joint in that goes between the concrete sections. They could be called Danley joints or Conley joints. Effectively, they're a crack control joint. And what they're designed to do is if you have a point which fails in one section of slab, the crack is going to travel across the surface of your concrete. And when it reaches that joint, it can't travel any further because every piece of concrete is essentially poured in isolation from one another. So what happens is the pressure comes along, it gets to the crack, and then it just transfers the whole pressure out of the concrete. It provides a movement position. So the same happens with brick veneer walls. Is you have friction points, and you've got a product which expands and contracts to do with heat and cold, and then you've also got the foundation underneath it also effectively moving potentially differentially. So the intention of an articulation joint is to provide a physical stop and start between two runs of wall. So in the instance you have one part that starts to fail, it doesn't impact on any of the others. If you get a huge crack in one bit of the wall, you've got a joint here where it's stopped and a joint there where it's stopped as well, and you can just take out that middle piece and fix it. Brickwork articulation joints. And that's what they look like. They're almost invisible if they're done well. And essentially it's just a 10 mil gap where you would ordinarily have mortar and you cut the bricks, or you cut the bricks and stop and start laying them. And what happens is you put a piece of foam in there. It's a 10 mil piece of foam, which is designed to, obviously compress and contract. And then you put a silicon joint in front of it to seal it from moisture coming through. Here's a good detail of it. So you put a brick tie either side, you put your compressible foam in the middle, you stop and start your bricks, and you put a mastic over it. And now the mastic is meant to be color matched to try and match the joint color as best as possible, so that essentially to the untrained eye it's almost unnoticeable. But what that does is it means if this wall plane here starts to fail, if it's not been laid well, if there's just some undue load applied to it, if it starts to crack and starts to fail, the crack's going to travel over and it's going to hit this point here, and it's not going to be able to continue into the other side. So essentially it provides a way for the house to move in planes, and it simultaneously prevents cracks from traveling. Does that all make sense?
Yep, much clear now. Good.
So usually you'll find articulation joints on all internal brickwork corners because you've got two bricks meeting into each other. The last thing you want them doing is trying to bash into each other. So what you do is you actually don't lay them into each other on a corner. You lay one in and then you leave a 10 mil gap and you butt the other one into it and put a piece of foam there. And that way, if they need to move, they're going to move in isolation. So you should find articulation joints specified on, nearly all, if not all, internal brickwork corners. And you'll also find them at runs along each face of the wall before there's a corner. And the frequency of them is determined by the site conditions. So on highly reactive sites, very, very reactive sites where the soil itself can move between 100 and 200 mil, like imagine your ground underneath you doing this, which is the kinds of soil that we have in Australia. The frequency of those is far more frequent than on some of our less reactive sites. For example, I think in South Australia, where they're predominantly dealing on extremely reactive sites, which can have soil move, 140, 160 mil, they could have those joints at pretty much 3 meter centers. Like you would almost find a joint alongside every single window, just because that there is that much movement that they've got to minimize that potential for shearing. On our less reactive sites, like we have over here on the east coast, you'll find that the code specifies that the spacing is to be no more than 6 meters apart. We generally work on the basis of 5.5 meters is kind of usually what we base ours on. And so what you do is you find all the internal corners first, which are all definitely going to have them, or let me rephrase that, all internal corners where you've got brick meeting into brick. So you'd have one right there. You'd have one right there. You got another internal corner there, but what you've got is also a sliding door. So when it comes to sliding doors or windows that are at the eave, effectively you've only got this much worth of transfer. And if you've got a door with a piece of fiber cement above it, you've actually stopped and started the brickwork entirely. Like it's like putting a piece of cladding in the middle. So when you get to full height doors or really high doors with fiber cement over the top, you stop there and then you start on the other side of it, because there's no way that the load can transfer. There's nothing that can crack. There's a piece of cladding in between. So the first thing we need to do is find out if there's brickwork over or if there's not brickwork over, because that has an impact. So we've got this internal corner, and let's just go to the plan that's actually to scale, because we'll measure on the floor plan and then we'll go to the elevations. Going to be one there, that's an external corner, external corner, external corner. Then we've got an internal corner here, but it's got a Versalux ceiling, which means it's taller, which means there's probably going to be brickwork over that door. So if we come around here and have a look at that perspective, brickwork over door. So that means that there is the potential for that load to transfer through. So what we'd do is we'd put one here on this internal corner, and then this one here doesn't actually, well, technically there's going to be one here, but it's going to be above the door only. So there'll be a little piece of foam above the door. So there'll be one there, there'll be one on that internal corner, and then we've got this run through here, which if we measure it, it's probably only about 4 or 5 meters. So in theory, you wouldn't require one there. But the problem is you've then got the same distance around this side, so you've got an 8 meter run without a joint. So you would put one right there, and then you'd be able to measure around. And we're at 4.2 meters, or less than 6 to the corner, so we just put one here on the corner. And if these doors don't have brickwork over them, then they're doing the same thing as a sliding door. They're stopping and starting the transfer. So if we measure around and we're less than 6 meters to the corner, then we're cool. We don't need any through here because it stops there and stops there. Nothing between there. We've got a small section here. We're probably going to end up having to put one on this window here, or potentially this window here, depending on the distance around. Now, as I was saying, because this is a brickwork into cladding, they're not joined. They're not going to try and move. So we don't need a joint there. It's an automatically stopping. So if we measure back from this corner around, that's 5.2. So we're going to want to put one here on this window. And if we can get back around to the other side in less than 6 meters, then we shouldn't need another one. So we can get back around that corner there. So we're fine there. We're only going to need one on that face. Automatically one there. There's automatically one there. So if we come around this side now, (4.6). Preferentially, we try to line them up with windows because they're less prominent, because instead of having to go the full height, you use the window like as part of it. So you actually line it up just below the window, and then the window actually acts as part of the expansion joint in itself, and it makes it less visually prominent. So one there. And we can get around to this side of the window. Now it's also worth noting that joints within 1.5 meters of an external corner are ordinarily considered ineffective, that they're too close to the edge, that they don't really do much. So we try not to put it on this side of the window. We always try to go 1.5 meters in before we put our first one in. So yeah, that's probably what, 2.5 meters. So that's fine there, and we're still within the 6 meters around to that side. Now we had one here on this corner. We've got brickwork over this sliding door, which means that we've got to count straight through it. And we're at 5.82 to that point just there, which means if we try to go to this side, we're too far away. We're at 8 meters. So what we're probably going to end up having to do is put one here and also put one there. And that way, this is far enough away from the corner, and that's far enough away from the corner, and we're still within 5 meters of each of them. So now what we want to do is we now want to represent that on the elevations. So we just want to put the legend here. And then we'll start going around and just putting some dashed lines to indicate the location of those. So if we look at the front of the house, we had one on the left-hand side of that awning window. Like that. Doesn't look very straight. Let's try that again. One articulation joint there. We had one on the left-hand side of that window and then the right-hand side of the other, which was this elevation here. Now the only thing I'm uncertain about is this around here, whether or not that's too far, because we may have to put one on this window. Yeah, it's way too far. So we need to put one on this side of that window. And that's going to mean we're less than 5 meters that way, and we're less than 5 meters that way. So where is that little powder window? Must be that wall just there. Just there. Now the next question is around through here. Once again, we're too far. In this internal corner, we're 4.69, so we can't get to the other side of the sliding door. So we're going to end up with one here on the edge of this sliding door. And because it's got brickwork over, we've actually got to measure through it. We can't exclude it. And if we go from here over, we're inside 6 meters. So we should be compliant everywhere. So we now want to put one on the right side of that big stacker door. And it's going to go all the way up here, which is where the bricks actually finish. I think we had one on the left-hand side of that other door, right-hand side. One there, one there, one there. There's one on the internal corner. There's one on the left-hand side of that sliding door, which also goes up to ceiling height, as does this one. We got away without any there, I think. Yep. So automatically an articulation joint there and there. We don't need to show it. Now the front elevation, I think we had one on that right, that window there. Now there's automatically one here, automatically one there, because there's actually no bricks here. So the bricks just stop and start already. Now, on that sliding door, which is facing this way, we just we didn't have anything. We had one on the actual corner next to it, which was there. Nothing where the gas was. Just one there in that internal corner. And so on and so forth. So that we want those replicated on these plans. Now that elevation there is that bedroom. There's an internal corner here. So we want to catch that on both elevations. And there was an internal corner there as well. And nothing there. Now, ideally, the articulation joints would be done by the draftsman exactly the same way for you, but that's not always the case. Was there one on this window here near the gas bottles? No. Maybe. No. There was one in the corner. Right there. So that's our articulation joints. If the driveway and path are shown on the site plan, please note as plain finish. It's already got plain, perfect. If the driveway and path are shown on the site plan, add dimensions for all changes in width, boundary, and at layback, as well as dimensions to side boundaries at the boundary. Now, if you were given this as a as a concreter, you've got Buckley's chance of reproducing that without some kind of actual detailing. We haven't given any dimensions. We haven't said what the width is at any individual points. We haven't given any setbacks. I mean, we haven't even said what this actually is. And I can assure you a concreter is not going to sit down for an hour beforehand and sketch this out in PDF to work out his individual dimensions. He's going to go out and he's going to produce something which may or may not end up like this. And you may end up with 210 square meters of concrete just because it was easier for them. Or the owner may end up getting this part here too steep, and then suddenly you haven't complied with your contract. So driveways in particular need a bit of attention to detail. We want to know what the distance is here at the boundary, as well as any changes of width preferably. So we got one here on this corner. Just individual increments to provide some kind of clarity to the tradesman what they're actually expected to provide. Now, in this instance here, there's actually an existing layback, so we don't really need to worry about dimensions as much as you would ordinarily where there's no reference point, because in this instance they're just joining concrete into tar. But it still would be helpful to provide them one offset here so that they actually can confirm that they're following the correct direction from the start. And unfortunately on these rural sites it's a little bit challenging to give them as many dimensions as you'd like, but we specify the width there, specify the distance here. The more dimensions effectively, the better. And then probably one right there before it starts swooping in. And that way they can come out from the corner, come in 3.1, do that, and then they can angle it around with their form boards. From that, they should be able to generally make sense of what's going on. So dimensions, perfect. If the air conditioning specified in the addendum A, we need to provide the air conditioning code, the dimensions of the internal and external air conditioning unit, as well as the location of all ceiling outlets. And we need to make sure the air conditioning unit pad shown on the slab plan and the site plan is actually accurate for the size of the air conditioner, bearing in mind that we want to be giving about 100 mil extra so that the thing doesn't look like it's overhanging the concrete, both in width and in length. So to do that, we have a look at the addendum A and see which air conditioning unit's been provided, if any. And there does not appear to be air conditioning on the house. That there must be a gas bottle, and that there must be a pump pad. So if we come around here, gas bottles, pump, there's no air conditioning. So we can skip that. Comments. There was no blinds, I already know that for a fact. But you'd essentially look in the addendum A, just where we were, and you'd type in the words curtain or blind or something like that. You'd look for internal products, look for glazing, look for, window covering, something like that. Not included in this instance. Request slab, that should say slab plan. I wrote this in a hurry. All right. So the details page, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but we include a range of details at the rear of the document for our trades and our estimates that they know what's required. We need to check to make sure the details that have been shown are a representation of what's actually being built, and have a quick look over it. So it's a 250 brick veneer, which is correct. It's brick veneer at the garage door opening, which is correct. So that's certainly that part there is all correct. The beam size is not yet known. That'll be determined at a later date. That's the correct detail. We've got a robe, a linen and store, broom and broom linen detail. Now these are all shown as 16 mil melamine, which in the instance of the Coffs Coast is correct. They get their shelving supplied and installed as melamine. So this is more of an instruction for the carpenter so they know what timber to put in the wall and at what heights behind. And so we don't really need to stress about that. That's the correct detail. This here is a non-standard detail. It's showing what we were describing yesterday about the square set. And so what's happening is we're putting cornice here at the top. We're bringing down a small frame, bringing the plasterboard down, plasterboard, and then plasterboard around. And as Cameron's noted here, gyprock to be square set around overhead frame. And so I'm just going to say remove the track and show the square gyprock. So it's actually a representation of what we're providing, because you should have that hatching continuing around. Now this here about the robe door track to be installed on the slab, delete by owner and presumably after floor coverings. So it's a good thing, it's a good chance this track will end up going through the floor coverings, not beforehand. Now, 70x35 timber to the robe frame. So effectively what we're doing is we're bringing us out a nib wall, and then we're just turning a piece of 70x35 on its side. And that says the robe door track. So once again, we want this detail changed, delete, and just show the square set plasterboard. So there's going to be a square set through there and a square set through there. Now the question is, this says 70x35 timber. The rest of the house is being done in 90. So I'd assume he wants that changed to 90. Because the wall head frame above it's going to be 90, so the sides need to be 90 as well. And no architrave around door. The rest of that looks fine. The next general question is, he's just shown a small piece, but I'm fairly certain he's actually shown proper framed sections. That looks a whole lot more substantial than a 90x35. So he's actually put small sections of nib wall there, probably varying distances, because he's tried to make these robe openings 200 increments, but we don't need to do that because we're not actually providing the doors. So that's been drawn, more than it. So small nib piece to be 35 from each end. The detail question mark. So one there. I think that's the only instances. 1, 2, 3. So we had the robe door detail, we don't need it. We had a robe linen and store configuration, that's fine, it's all by owner. Kitchen bulkhead, it doesn't appear we're actually providing a bulkhead, the owner's doing all the kitchen cabinetry themselves. No bulkhead, kitchen by owner. The garage door beam, I believe we had that detail. Being this one here, garage door beam. Garage door blocking detail. Now he's entirely missed that. There's another detail that needs to go on which shows all the timber that needs to go in the ceiling and the walls to suit the installation of the garage door tracks. Garage door blocking detail missing. The garage frame enclosing detail, which shows the timber to close off the cavity, is this one just here. So that's perfect. There's no boundary walls in this house. The built-in bathtub, it only applies if there's actually a checked-in bathtub where the bath is built up against the wall. In this instance, there is one, and there's also a freestanding bath. So ideally, we need a detail for potentially both of those. Checked in bath and corner freestanding bath details missing. Missing both the checked in and the corner freestanding details. So we can mark off this details page, request the standard section for the ceiling height, site classification, roof type, wall type, and wind classification. Gives a bit of a description there, i.e., M class site, blah, blah, blah. Cameron's got the section here. S&M class, 2590 ceilings, or 2590 wall height, technically, that's the pitching point. 22.5 degree roof pitch, metal battens at 450s. Now, if he's gone truss centers of 1200, he will also require intermediate roofing battens at 900 millimeter centers as well, because you can't have 1200 one way and 900 the other because someone will fall through and die. So ideally we need battens in between each of these. Ceiling battens at 450. He's got steel and steel, looks great. He's got his window heights shown, which I think didn't quite match up with the elevations, so we just want to check that. Please check windows on elevations seem to be closer. Was it 2220 we measured? I mean, the scale was not quite right, but 0.1 to 1. Yeah, 2220. All right, so we can mark that off. Now, council requirements. Now, they're the things specifically required for council to approve the plans. I'm not going to bore you with that right now. Cameron's got his head around that. Cameron knows what he needs to do. Obviously, Sachin and CJ, I'll discuss that with you separately because we work in more challenging areas than where Arjun and Cameron do. The councils around here are pretty relaxed, so we'll just skip that. And then Shane to check and provide any amendments. Now, obviously, I've just done that. And then the roof drainage design to AS 3500. So I've already done the roof drainage design for Cameron. I don't know if he's planning on adding it to the plan set or not, but ideally he should. So roof drainage design with valley sheet sizes missing. And then what you would do is after I've checked all of it, I've made all these markups, I've checked your markups, made sure they're consistent and that I agree. Then what we do is we actually put them through as a request for council plans with the associated quantity sheet. Now, Cameron's already used the portal to request council drawings of himself. Hasn't marked them yet as being complete because he's still waiting on the design approval. So what happens is I'll send him these plans afterwards and ask that he has a look over these and checks them and makes the changes. Now I'm just going to pause for a moment, gents. Pause record, resume recording. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to send these plans to Cameron separately because if I try and put through a modification request in the design portal for I can't, it won't let me do a council amendment because he hasn't marked off council as being complete. So if for example I put this in, and then come here to attachments, design portal, we can now put this amendment in. And I'll just grab these plans, which you probably can't see off screen, and just drag them onto here. Now, normally you're expected to write an itemized list of changes. I'm just going to say refer to markups because they are pretty self-explanatory. And that's now put through a request council amendment and also put in a due date for when that will be completed, and we'll very shortly email Cameron with my markups. And that's why it's important that you have these tasks and these business contacts completed. So continuing on with Todoist, we'll just mark this off because we've already got the council plans and quantities sheet. We've received them. Now the basics and nathers, Cameron is attending to that himself. We don't need to worry about that in this instance. Once again, I'll go through this separately with Sachin and Sejo in relation to other clients, but there is an Excel file that we have to complete and send off to our consultant for them to stamp the plans to confirm the house complies with your water, electricity and thermal requirements. And sometimes they come back after they've modelled the house and say, no, it's failed, you need to upgrade your insulation or put some special tinting on your glass or get rid of your air conditioning or something like that. Cameron doing Now engineering. Now, unfortunately, we can't request that yet at this point in time because Cameron hasn't released us the final plans in the appropriate format. So we don't have the council plans in DWG, and we don't have the final council plans in PDF either. And he doesn't want to order the engineering until he gets the design approval to make sure that the slab and nothing else changes. What we have is we have an Intrax order form, which I had attached here on the master, but it's gone walkabouts. So I'm going to try and do that again on the master. Intrax order form. Because I think I saved that in my downloads. Intrax. Not there. Let's try here. Here we go. All form residential, new order form. There we go. I'm just going to drag this over and upload it into the template so it's there in the future. Template to be completed. And that is some crazy wind out there. There's like trees laying down. At least I weigh enough that I won't blow away.
Like, is it common like in this part of the year? Like you have
No, this is very, very out of character. I was driving into work this morning and they said something about between 60 and 100 kilometer winds and some pretty significant rain. And it's just come out of absolutely nowhere in the last half an hour. And it's probably exacerbated by the fact that I've got a tree on the neighbour's property immediately beside this window just above me. And so it keeps bashing up against the glass.
Oh, you're a bit terrified at the office right now.
If you see me running. All right, so we've got the Intrax order form here. So this is a form that needs to be submitted along to Intrax alongside the individual files to request engineering. So when you click on that, that'll open up. It's eventually replaced by your PPP may not be able to view this type of content. Save link as. And download that. That'll open up in PDF. Now this is what the form looks like. Obviously it's got to be completed for each individual project and each builder. Integrity Homes such and such, or the branch. So in this instance it would be Coffs Coast. Shane Herps, Shane, and the job number is CH190051/069. Now the price will complete once we know what the final scope is going to be. Postcode 2448. Suburb, that would have been Valor. Pearl Circuit, I'm assuming. Lot 51, and we don't have a street number yet, and it's in New South Wales. So information. Now, Intrax did not do the geotechnical report on this one, so they will need a copy of the soil classification report, and we'll also need some particulars on it, which we can find here in the geotechnical. Now that should say geotechnical_classification_report, otherwise the naming convention won't work. So H20-0387. H0387, and the site classification was classified as an M with no other underlying issues. Single story, house type if applicable, doesn't matter, brick veneer. issue tender for review before finalisation. So we obviously want that to make sure that we can check the engineering rather than having to try to get them to amend it after the fact. Concrete slab, waffle slab. And so I've got some standard notes here. Hatch the entire set down pod area, including the 500mm required in each direction, not just the actual wet area. Please add stormwater and sewer swivel joints on houses with trees, details, etc. on houses with trees. If you have to add piers, please add as many as is necessary to avoid upgrading slab type. So slab shower recess required to be shown, yes. The porch is an integrated slab. It's being poured as part of the house, as we can clearly see on the slab plan, as is the alfresco and other external areas. Alfresco integrated, garage integrated, additional slab or footing preference. We would probably note 75mm set down to external areas. And 35mm set down to wet areas. Now, given that this is a steel frame and truss, or is anticipated to be a steel frame and truss, we don't need a wall bracing design because they do all their own engineering and supply and install the product. So we untick that. A masonry wall articulation design, we've already done that ourselves. Drainage design, we do require a full design. And there's no other information required. Now, street purl circuit. Now, we can't submit this just yet, as I said, because we don't have the prerequisite information. So I'm just going to press this email button, which is going to capture all the data I've entered. And we'll just put that, say, here in the quantities folder for the time being to circle back to.
Shane, like what is this integrated slab that we had just ticked over here?
So what it means is it's actually part of the house slab. So the house slab, it just comes out and it's all part of the same thing.
Okay, cool.
So we have a patio also, right? So
yes,
do we
correct.
need to specify that?
I mean, we certainly could. Set down to external areas, porch, is it patio and alfresco, and 35mm set down to wet areas as per the slab plan. Oh, missed the O and alfresco. And I'll just delete that one I just uploaded and put the new one in. And as I said, once we've got the information, then yeah, like the final stuff, then we can send it through. Actually, I've said here, upload it to the engineering Dropbox folder. So engineering Dropbox. So that one. Now the pricing, I will check. So I'm just going to put a note against that saying pricing still to be added once we have final scope. Wow, that wind is scary. So I can't do that. Intrax order form hasn't been checked by me. Council plans in PDF, we don't have the final ones for, and all these things form part of an email you send. So we can't mark off any of these just yet. Because we don't have the email prepared. Issue quote requests. Cameron's told us we can't do it. iEstimate Excel takeoff. We've mostly completed. I'm actually going to split that into two items in the template, given that we kind of do it in two stages. iEstimate task 1, initial iEstimate for engineering, and complete iEstimate reinforcing and concrete after engineering received. That way you can mark off each of the stages. Close that template back up and come back to this job. So we're going to leave that as an open standing item until we get the engineering, upload plans with wet areas and partially or fully completed iEstimate to the quantities folder on the job, which we've done. And we would ideally have liked to have issued quote requests, but we can't. So we're going to skip that. And now we're into explode into Build.iQ. I've probably timed out and been kicked out by now. There we go. So jobs or Bricklayer Quantities, come to the job. There's a whole lot of stuff in here that Arjan's done. What I'm going to do is copy that to a dummy job so he can compare what he's done after the fact. Let's see if there's anything on the test job. If not, we'll copy it to there. Now, copy quantities here to there. Now, unfortunately, you can't shift click and select multiple cost centers, I most recently found out. So I can't delete everything in one hit, but there's only a small amount there at this stage. So if all the cost centers were there, it would have been would have taken 5 minutes to do this. All right, so we've cleared the job out. Make sure there's no orders showing up. Perfect, which means there's no suppliers. 190055, cost center 999. Now there is a little, I guess, help guide based around data build available here in the estimators folder. Which was obviously written 5 years ago, but describes generally the process, the quantities we take, and where these values come from and how we enter them into, well, how we were entering them into data build. Essentially, it's not that largely dissimilar in Build.iQ, but I'll just send that to each of you just to have a look at in your own time. Essentially, the process is we want to open up the Excel file. We want to come here to the iEstimate summary. We want to pinch some information out of this Excel document, and then we want to answer the questions that we're presented with out of Build.iQ from the variables, which I need to make sure are all cleared. So standard item is the item where all of our standard designer specification items live. Bricklayer quantity is obviously where we put the bricklayer labor. Contract amount is used for our many of our contingencies and insurances and things that are paid for based upon contract value. Enclosed area external means the size of the house on the outside of the brickwork. Enclosed internal means the size of the house on the inside of the timber frame. Unenclosed is external areas. Total area is obviously the total area. Ancillaries is just a quick one for things that are often upsold, like floor coverings. X-Lite we don't need. External concrete we've got. And then we've got a slab type. We've got an M and a H1 available at this point in time. Now we've already read the geotech and seen that it was an M-class site. And further to that, they said that there was no site problems whatsoever. ASCT is happy to report that none of these potential problems were encountered at your site. So for all intents and purposes, we're very, very safe adding this waffle pod M-class item. Now these values here we enter off the Excel file. So standard item just stays as 1 as per this here, standard item. Bricklayer 5230, which is hopefully an addition of all of those bricks, and I just got to check that. It seems to be only looking at one of the cells, so I need to get that fixed potentially. And it seems to be rounding to one more, which is odd. because Bricklayer is actually these two combined, which is 73.49. So I need to fix that on the Excel document. Contract amount is entered including GST, not excluding. Currently this is giving you the contract amount including, which is good, 450,000. Enclosed areas external. Oh, hang on, I just leave these all as one that actually asks you the questions in the explosion. Let's go and do an explosion. I'll show you. Explode template. Enter 1 if sales consultant, else 0. So we've got 0. Enter contract price including GST, 450,000. Enter 0 for a bottle LPG gas or 1 for reticulated natural gas, where there was bottles on the plan, so it's LPG. Roofing 1 if metal or 2 if tile, it was metal. Truss spacing is anticipated to be 1200 because it's steel. Enter 1 if there's fibre cement cladding, there's Newport cladding. Enter 1 if Exolite, 0. Enter lineal meters of site security fencing. So that's something we haven't yet measured and just now need to get out the plans and measure. So the site fencing is necessary to secure the working site for the house. So we just want to make sure we got the right scale set, 1 to 250, which I think I did all these wrong anyway because they're all at 1 to 200. And not that that matters, Cameron will sort that out himself. 1 to 0.25. So we just want to come out and around the house here, just enough that we've got enough of a working platform, probably something like this. On a residential site where you've got tight confounds, a lot of the time it's just the actual perimeter of the site. In other instances on rural areas, it's just enough that they've got working areas. I mean, you know, the project manager may end up doing something, you know, like this, but it's just about allowing what is, you know, considered generally necessary, and then rounding it to 2.5 meters. The other thing to do is have a look at the contract and see what the contract says about the inclusion. Sometimes there is no site fencing allowed. And so it appears Cameron's allowed for a total of 145. So we'll just put that in. Enter 0 for single story or 1 for double. It's 0. State New South Wales is 1. Enter lineal meter length of recessed door tracks. Now that's something we measure off the slab plan because the trades get paid extra for these. And fortunately for us, the dimensions have been provided. So we've got 3.6, we've got 0.82, 1.5, 2.4, 1.02 and 2.4. So we've got a total of 11.74. We probably should pay it on the garage door openings now I think about it. 2.4 and 5, just for consistency's sake. So we've got 19.14 linear meters. Enter the MPA of the concrete strength in the main slab. Now, in some areas, you'll find that that goes up to 25, but 9 times out of 10, our slabs are going to be 20 MPA. Also, like I said, obviously, we've added this waffle pod item now. Potentially, we should have waited until we had the engineering and we had all the information. But I'm just going to wing it. SL82 mesh. Enter the number of recessed wet areas. So we got 1, 2, and 3. Enter the depth in millimeters of the slab step downs, else 0, and then the length. So what it's talking about there is the height change between the main slab and the set down areas, which is 75 mil. But it's asking for it, in millimeters, so 75. And then the length of those step down areas, 1 to 100. I'm just going to measure here in line with the bricks. $13.81 plus 8.22. And in this instance here, we obviously can't measure along the bricks, we've got to measure along the wall. 1.6. And another one through here for the gas bottle pad. 1 meter. And another one through there, being 1.1. So 28.29. Now there's no deepened edge formwork on this slab. The house is just a slab on ground. You can see that from the elevations. There's no big thick sections of slab that are like holding up, keeping the house in the ground. Enter 1 if tank external from slab, else 0. Well, technically the tank slab is external, so 1. Quantity generator, enter meters squared of total slab area, which we get straight off the slab plan. 367.32. The meters squared of hard floor coverings plan, 93.71. Carpet of 91.56. No curtains or blinds. Landscaping, there was turf, so we'll do a 1. No glass splashback, no fencing. There's no kitchen stone top because the whole kitchen's by owner. No cabinet made laundries, no cabinet made vanities, no air conditioning. Dishwasher. Let's have a look and see in the addendum. No dishwasher. Ducted range hood. Appliances. No upgrades to the appliances. Nothing here for the kitchen at all. I think the owner's actually potentially supplying and installing all his own appliances anyway. 0. Quantity of wet area niches, else 0. So is there any niches in his wet areas? Nothing there. Nothing there. Nothing there. It's very surprising. Lineal meters of bulkhead. We already measured that. And it was 4.42. Digital television antenna, yes or no. Electrical and lighting. Provide 1 builder's range digital TV antenna. Where'd that go? Right there. So we put a 1. There's no decking. There's no main floor tiles. There's no balustrade. There is steel frame and truss. The quantity of posts is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 posts. Enter length in lineal meters of external concrete paving abutting the curb. Now this house doesn't have a curb, but what we do have is we have concrete abutting into existing product. So we need to provide some kind of joint there. It's a foam joint that separates the two that I was describing earlier. So if we get the right scale out, 1 to 625, maybe let's just go to this one, 0.25. And we measure this exact section here. We've got 3.25 lineal meters. Now, external concrete is nearly always 25 MPa, except for in like freezing cold temperatures where we might go to 32 or just put a retardant in it. Enter the length in lineal meters where external concrete abuts the house, as in it physically touches against the concrete slab. So we have the concrete here on this edge, across to that edge there, which is 9.73, which we should be able to check from the actual floor plan. 9.23 plus 0.25 plus, yep, 9.73. And then we've got this section here at the front of the porch, where the porch butts in. being another 1. No, that's not right. Oh, it is 1.05. Is that right? Is that a 1 or a 7? 1 to point. Oh, we're on the wrong one. That looks a bit better. 2.56. So we have 12.29 linear meters of concrete abutting the house. Now the area of the concrete is provided on the site plan, being 195 square meters. Now the distance from breaking surf determines whether or not we need to add upgrades for the exposure classification. Now, first thing to do is just jump on Google and have a quick look. So I'm just looking off screen, Google Maps. Now, when you're only given a lot in DP, it's a little bit harder. So we've got a lot in a DP here. So what I'm actually going to do is use the planning portal website here, find a property, and it has some the ability to search for lot and DP. Now this was 51/DP 1246944. Select. That's the owner's site. Come here and go to New South Wales imagery. It should hopefully load any moment now. There we go. And as you can see, that's our site. This is the ocean here with a cluster of trees in the middle. Now the house itself is going to be positioned over here at the closest point. So if we just grab out a measure tool, measurement, measure distance, and we grab the water's edge probably at the closest distance and come across, we're at best case scenario about 600 meters. At worst case scenario, probably 500. So let's we'll just go 501. That's getting us in that 500 to 600 range. Bricklayer Quantity, we'd actually worked out wasn't right on the cover page earlier. It was the addition of 2 different cells, which are that one and that one and that one. So we've got 7349. It is brick veneer. The wind classification will be stated on the addendum A. It's an N2, so we just put in 2. Enter the meter squared, the total house area under roof, which once again is here. Total area 366.53. Now the outside face of the house, including the brickwork, is 302.88. The total unenclosed area is 63.65. And then the inside face is 280.96. And now, if I haven't broken anything, I should be able to magically press Save Changes. Yes. And we now have what is effectively a designer specification bill of quantities underway. So the franchise royalties, as you can see, they come in, everything comes in without a supplier and without a price. The suppliers are chosen and adjusted from this section here. So we've got integrity franchising. I don't know why subcontractor would even be showing in that list. They're not paying royalties to any subcontractors. So I'm just going to come here to franchise royalty and get rid of that. You can go away. And by changing that to integrity franchising, it automatically triggered a reprice and it brought in the price. And royalties are paid on the exclusive GST contract value, which is automatically being calculated by putting in the Inc. GST price. It just divided it by the required number. So this price on this house XGST 409091 409090.91 to be sent, and green 255. Same with this one here, it's just paid on the contract price, which is automatically being calculated. Mark in green. Construction insurance we need to work out, so that's going to be marked in red. Warranty insurance was back here in our calculation. 4446 for the main fee. 4446. The brokerage fee was 250. And the stamp duty was 440.15. So we can mark that as being complete. Energy and thermal, that needs to be set up, 054. We just recently created some new cost centers and split things up. Energy advance. And by doing that, it brought their prices in automatically. Drafting, we can delete. It doesn't need to be there. Cameron does his own drafting. He's not paying any fees for that, so we'll delete that cost center. Estimating does need to be there because obviously he's paying for that service to service hub, so 058. Needs franchising added. Integrity, ooh. Technically it's this company, I better fix the price lists. I'll send myself an email to do that. Shane, add service hub. All right, so when I change this to integrity franchise, the pricing won't come in because I haven't set the pricing up for that entity yet, because we just recently changed companies. This one here, it's coming with a NATHERS certificate, NATHERS assessment, BAS, and a BASICS. So we just want to have a quick look at the addendum A and see if there was a NATHERS allowed. There was indeed, so that's just done. If there was no NATHERS, you just delete that section about NATHERS. So what I'm going to do now is sort the entire job by load, which is just going to also sort by code as well, just to make things a little bit tidier. I don't know why that has not sorted by code properly. That's it better. And contingency, it's a low set house. It asked us previously if it was single story. We said yes, so it's brought in the low set item. Only one supplier. And that's automatically done by the contract price. Maintenance, same thing, automatically done by the contract price. TV antenna, we told it there was one. We checked the addendum, we set the supplier, there's only one, Scott Bruton. His price comes in, job done. We've lost Arjun, have we? Oh no, he's back. He's gone again.
Yeah, he just went off. Maybe some problem with his connection.
Many of these here are allowances only based upon the actual size of the site. Come on, hide archived items.
So Shane, like the suppliers will be already for each preferred cost centers.
Is mostly set up, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So for trades, most of our builders just ask that we leave it made out to the generic term subcontractor, and that way they can give the purchase order to whoever they like. Whereas some of our franchisees, Coffs Coast, for example, have pretty set trades that they use over and over again. So sometimes they'll ask for those purchase orders to be made specifically out to the person, and then that person will already be in the list if I've already done work for them. So for example, if we come up here to cost center 531, which is wall and ceiling plastering, we've got one tradesman in there ready to go. Installation supply, Access Installation is the only person that does our installation, and they've got supplier pricing, and so that pricing's automatically getting applied. Garage doors, we only use B&D garage doors, pricing automatically comes in. Not bad, eh?
No, like, so it avoids the unnecessary confusions, like, so we won't just mess up with the other suppliers for each cost centers.
Correct. So I've set up all of the defaults for the people with whom I've already done work for previously. So cabinet maker, we can just delete this cost center out entirely because the owner's supplying the whole kitchen. We come down here, landscaping, we want a turf. I think there was a turf allowance in the contract. iProx turf. So the client's been charged for 200 square meters of turf at a very, very specific rate. It's not a PS amount. So we just want to go turf, supply, and lay, and we'll mark this in red because we need to obviously get a quote. 200 meters squared. And question is, what kind of turf was it? Buffalo. Now, always do everything in full caps. Oh. Delete that item. Now, obviously, this here is not how much turf costs. I need to get rid of that price, $67.53. Maybe in some areas you can get turf that cheap, but certainly not around here. Certainly that's what we were paying in 2004, apparently. Ideally, that should be a quotation. It's a bit better. And then we've got a bobcat allowance here for landscaping prep, which we'll put on a separate load. Now let's come in without a price. It's probably going to be in the vicinity of about $1.50 to $2 a square meter for them to shape the site. If there's 200 square meters, you're probably looking at about 3, maybe 4 hours worth of work. So if I go say $1.75, that price is now in there. That's going to allow for almost exactly 3 hours worth of labor to prepare the site for the supply and install of turf. House clean, that all comes in automatically. Now I'm just going to tidy up some of these templates because I've recently been deleting out some of these random spaces, and I've been working on our general notes on our items in the background, but I can't update every catalog simultaneously. I can only do each one in isolation. So I'm just having a look at one that I think I updated the other day so I can copy its text. Brisbane. So that was costs on at $880. $880. That's a bit tidier. There we go. There we go. And as you can see, the quantities have already come in. So we just put subcontractor, subcontractor, mark in green. Floor coverings, obviously we need to find out what the owner has selected in their color selection and what they're entitled to in their contract. It automatically comes in with the designer range carpet and with the Cortec Pro Plus product. But if the owners have selected something different in their color selection or were actually entitled to something entirely different from the outset, then obviously, we would have to adjust these. So we're just going to mark these in red for the moment. Now the supplier is carpet call and subcontractor for the allowance. This one here we can mark as yellow because it's just an allowance based upon the square meterage. It's allowed 2 travel trips because the area we've put in is over 90 square meters, so that there is correct. It's allowed for 1 carpet freight up to 130 square meters because the carpet area is only 91.56. Now, in terms of the actual addendum carpet, they've gone for exactly what we've exploded, the designer range and the Cortec Pro Plus in the addendum, but we don't know if that's actually what they've settled on during their color selection. They may have gone and upgraded to our executive range carpet potentially, and until we've got that color selection document, we can't adjust these items or mark them as green, so we'll just leave them in red. Site clean is just an allowance only. Subcontractor, green. External concrete labor, it's just a square meter rate. There's your price, there's your square meterage. Now I'm pretty sure I actually updated this once again in a different database just the other day. I'm just having a look, 810. Place, looks like this one here might have already been updated, 1 through 8. Yeah, that's the latest text, that's good. 195 square meters at that price. The end, subcontractor. External concrete earthworks, it's just an allowance for the earthworks to actually excavate the site and shape it. Job done. External concrete pumping, we currently get that from Watts Concrete on a fixed price basis. Prices come in, quantity of 1, there's 1 driveway, 1 pour, the end. Now there's currently a bug where you can't set the same color. Like it just doesn't work. You've got to manually change the number to something else and then change it back. 255 being the green we use, 255 being the red we use, and 255 in red and 255 in green being the yellow we use for a consistent color scheme. External concrete, so the concrete has been worked out based upon the square meterage. Automatically, it's assumed 125 thick with a wastage factor, so it's probably gone 195 times by 1.15. So 115, yeah, 1.15 for 790, what size concrete? 125. 195 times 1.25, probably with a wastage factor of about 1.125 is, so 195 square meters at 125 mils thick. Then with a 10% wastage factor arrives at 26.812 meters squared, which when rounded to 0.2 square meters is 27. So the concrete's right. Borrow, there's your price, job done. Reinforcing is unfortunately not that easy. We actually have to work that out individually because the key joints all have to be done at particular spacing. The steel size is, I guess, open for discussion as to whether or not it should be 72 or 82. While I think the site conditions would suggest we were able to get away with 72, I think the project manager would feel more comfortable knowing we used 82. So I'm just bumping that up to 82 now. The freight for the steel, that can be changed to yellow. This permanent ripper strip is a little strip that goes on top of the downly key joints. So until we work out all our key joint lengths, we can't do it. The bar chairs have been worked out on the basis that there is one bar chair per meter squared, and then it rounds to bags of 100, which is how they're sold. And it's done the 75/90 because the slab thickness is 125, and obviously we want the steel sitting at the top. So that one there's marked off. The steel, it's actually only bringing in one in all instances, because normally we don't pour driveways anywhere near this large, but I'm just going to bump that up to 2 because there's going to be more than one guy, tying steel. The sticky back expansion is the product that we use against the edge of the garage, along the face of it, and also where there's concrete abutting the house, and also where the concrete abuts the tar. And obviously the 2 lengths that we added in for that were still less than 25 meters. While it actually doesn't say it's a 25-meter roll, but it is. Probably should get that added. AFX. Should make it a bit more straightforward. So obviously on the site plan here, that 8.78 plus that 2.56 plus that 2.53 were less than the length of one roll, so it's only put in one roll of tape. The steel has been worked out on a square meter basis, probably on 12.5 square meters, I would imagine. So 195 square meters divided by 12.5 is 15.6. When rounded to sheets is 16 sheets in total. Turn down my air conditioning, it's getting a bit warm. Now these friction cut dowels, what they are for is for the doweling detail required between the driveway pavement and the edge beam of the house. What we'd like to do is we like to put a dowel into that. We drill in and we put a dowel in so that there's no possible way that the concrete can lift or fall. There's 2 items in there, probably because they actually relate to 2 different circumstances. One relates to doing the same thing into the back of the curb, and one is for the house. Why they've both come in as 4, I need to check on, because there should be a whole lot more than 4. So obviously it's doing that equation wrong, because they actually go in at 400 millimeter increments, the entire length. So if we have a look here at the external concrete templates, so if quantity is greater than 0 and the length of the external concrete paving abutting the curb is also greater than 0, then do this. And the quantity is enter length, linear meters, divided by 0.9 plus 1 and round to 1. So minus 0.75 divided by 0.9. So I need to find out why this equation here isn't working as it's intended and get that corrected. Dowel joints equation not correct. It just might not be passing those brackets correctly, or it might be struggling with the rounding function. I just need to look into that and get that corrected. But for all intents and purposes, because this is tar at the front, there's no curb, we can't actually dowel into anything. So the only spot we're going to have dowels is going to be at this point just here and that point there. So we've got 8.78 plus 2.56, so we've got 11.34 linear meters abutting external concrete. And now the actual dowels go in at 400 increments. So divided by 0.4 would be 28.35, And then obviously you've got a round and you've got to add one for each end because it doesn't always work. So if we allow for say 30 in this instance, we're going to be safe. You guys follow that?
Yep.
And that's going to allow for the steel that butts into the house at the porch and at the garage. And we'll circle back and do these key joints shortly. The driveway fill, once again, that's just calculated based upon the size of the area, assuming probably 50 mil or 60 mil on average, spread underneath it. For leveling purposes, fly screens is a quote, which is usually from Bunnings, but we need to get a quote, so we'll just mark that in red because we can't send any quotes. Lighting is nearly always from Beacon, and we can get those quantities straight off the lighting and electrical plan, which we'll circle back to in a moment. Painter, subcontractor, so the areas, most of which are already here for us. Once again, we'll check that in a minute. Plumber fit off, so on and so forth. So a lot of these now we're going to go through. So if I just jump up here to say 321, steel frame and truss, there's a range of suppliers here. We don't know who it's going to be just yet. We're just going to mark that in red because we need to get a quote. The concreter, the slab area is there, slab area is there. Now there is no rainwater tank concrete pad, it's actually gravel, so we'll delete that. Forming step down up to 100 mil, so that's to do with the garage, some porch and alfresco, which we filled in the equation. 3 wet area step downs, recessed door tracks, that's all there, all done. Concrete is labours finished. Now what we do is we take some money off the concreter on the one purchase order, and then we give it back to him on the other purchase order if we're happy with all of his set down areas being correct. So we withhold $1 a square meter on the house area, which we make available here on a separate purchase order for them to claim after the fact. So both of those are done. Slab concrete supply. House, including garage, porch, patio, and alfresco. We will check this, but that is the estimated concrete supply based upon the waffle pod calculation we're doing, which is probably 0.171 with about 14% wastage or something to that effect. Once we do our steel calculations, we'll be able to check the accuracy of this. But for all intents and purposes, I'd say it's going to be plus or minus probably a cubic meter either way. Now this is the concrete pump, which is just a fixed rate per pour. Now the slab reinforcing, obviously we can't do that yet, and I need to come back and fix this explosion because we're actually ordering steel different to this now. So I need to mark that in red to fix that. Our experience has been that it doesn't seem to matter. The company that we were ordering the product from, they have an estimation service where they charge you a square meter rate to supply all the reinforcing and pods on a house. The problem is though, we've found their actual takeoff service to be severely lacking. And so the last 3 houses I gave them, they've all been oversupplying pods or undersupplying pods, or if they undersupply one, they oversupply something else, and it's just been annoying to say the least. So where possible, we try to do our own takeoffs ourselves, and that way that when we place the order, we know that the correct amount of steel and pods should be delivered based upon our measurements rather than just based upon square meter rates. And that way, if it's wrong, well, we were wrong. We're happy to be accountable for our own mistakes, but we don't want to be accountable for other people's mistakes. So subcontractor for load 2, S&S Cooper for load 1. So we've got some items there for the electrical lead in. Plumber, come back and do that. Termite. I usually just like to go through and mark everything as red to say to come back and do it. Driveway crossover gravel, crusher dust, that's fine. Don't need to do anything more there. Rainwater tank, while it's brought in this rainwater tank, that's not actually the tank we're going to be providing. We're going to be getting a big Rhino tank. The supplier will be Kingspan, but it will be a completely different tank, so we'll need to fix that. Steel frame and truss crane allowance, one of those, because all they've got to use the crane for is to lift the trusses.
So Shane, like the rainwater tank, we will have to get it coated.
Correct. Yep. Yep. So we don't have the 79,000 litre product that they require. So we'll have to get that quoted. Sand up for waffle pod slab, which is what we've got. Why on earth is McDonald on cost center 110? Come on. There we go. Another cost center finished. Surveyor's labor. Now, the price of this item includes up to 20 pegs. Additional pegs, if required, will be added as a separate line item. So to work out the surveyor's order, we just need to count all the external corners and internal corners on the house, because we ask for every single one of them to be pegged. So blue, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now we want to know exactly where this point is as well. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Wow, that worked out, didn't it? Probably going to end up with one there, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 is all of our internal and external corners. So we need to add an additional 5 additional, 5, reprice it, and mark as green. Equipment hire. I don't know why that's not come in with a value. Something not right about that, because I put in 140, so it should have actually done the equation and put in temporary fencing amount for us. So do this if greater than 0, and do this if greater than 42.5, and then enter it and minus 42. There must be something wrong with the rounding function. I'll have to have a word with the development team and get them to check it, because it seems like the two things that haven't worked so far are something to do with this rounding. I don't know if it wants brackets in this to tell it the stages or what's going on. Also, just sending myself an email. The temporary fencing isn't working either. So something not right there. So we should have this one here. So we should have 1 for the up to 42.5 linear meters. And then our total allowance was 140. So we should have 97.5 in this one here. Fencing, dump and pump toilets, and supplier. one allowance, one base price, and we just go, now is 140 divided by 2.5 is exactly total of 140 millimeters, just so there's no confusion. Sort job by item code, by load, and we can mark that as complete. Engineering inspections I'm going to delete because Wayne doesn't get those done. Structural engineering, he doesn't. 069, that's the design. What's the code? 100 inspection. Structural inspections. So we can get rid of each of these because Wayne just doesn't get them done. Templates, delete. Trash that. And we can delete this whole cost center. Engineering design we do need. Now this structural engineering, because it's going to be steel, probably won't be required. Foundation engineering will be. I can get rid of that extra over custom thing. It's not needed anymore. Delete that. So the foundation engineering is correct. Although could have sworn the price was meant to be higher than that because it included the stormwater stuff. I think that's meant to be 290 now. Prices, supplier price, Intrax, 290. So as you can see, we've probably just done about 40 or 50% of the bill of quantities. It's, I don't know how long it normally takes you guys to do this kind of stuff with your former company, but does this seem like it works?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, good.
it's very different actually. Like
Yeah.
in HomeCoop, actually, we had the standard plans for each standard BOQ.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we always used to copy it and just adjusting the basic quantities because they were usually building the standard houses, not such customs or such different houses. So
Yeah.
and they didn't had any like go with the recipes. So it was it's
They
very
didn't even
different.
use recipe. We just copy over the job or like copy over the standards, which includes all the suppliers and everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really estimation; it was copying and pasting.
Yeah, it was pretty basic steps actually, and a lot of codes actually.
Yeah,
Like
rarely we get a non-standard work. Yeah, but we have done some.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
so, so it's good learning actually in here in integrity. So it's good actually to learn and grow actually.
Yes, we do very little in the way of standards. While we have several hundred standard designs, we will never probably ever build one. Everything is custom, everything's unique. One builder does 90 mil wall frames, another one does 70. Someone must do steel roof, someone does tile roof. Some of them have the concrete to the porch and al fresco included. Some of them don't. Driveways, you name it. Pardon me. So for all intents and purposes, every one of our projects is considered unique and custom in isolation. We're also strong advocates of never ever copying jobs. I think I was telling Arjun, essentially you're relying on one person to have created an estimate or a bill of quantities that's correct, and then someone else is just going to keep copying your mistakes. Yeah, it's copying jobs is a great way to just compound an issue. Instead of getting something wrong on one house, you end up getting it wrong on 20 houses. Using a standard template explosion means you can actively maintain your explosions and minimize your mistakes. If there's something wrong in one explosion, you might have only exploded one job before you have an opportunity to fix it, and then all future jobs won't have that dodgy item in it anymore. It also means that, you can keep things fresh. It means if your specification is constantly developing, products are changing, tapware's changing, that the day that I send an email out to the builders and say, we've signed a new agreement and we're now using this laundry tub, I will have already gone into Build.iQ and swapped out the laundry tub. So any explosion done after that date is going to come in with the correct laundry tub. So it makes
it updated if any of the prices are getting updated and all.
So I maintain the pricing in the catalog. So I update the trade labor prices and update all the supplier prices. So we get very, very few quotes. Most of our stuff is done based upon pre-agreed price lists. We get quotes for tiling, only because there's just so many different tiles and freight, varies largely. Wastage factor on tiles. While we could do the quantities ourselves and could order them ourselves, if we get it wrong, then we're liable. However, if we leave it, we do our own takeoff and then we compare it to Beaumont's takeoff. But we order the tiles on the supply quotation. Our robes, shower screens, mirrors, and robe fit outs, they're all just on line items with full prices. Our tapware, all of our PC items, all of our mixers, sinks, tubs, they're all on price list from Reese or Bunnings. Tile labor, we put that in ourselves. Plumber fit off, obviously that's labor. Painters labor. We get quotes for windows, fly screens, tile supply, and frame and truss and roofing. So we probably on average for a standard house would get no more than 5 quotes. Everything else we can do from our agreed price list and our actively maintained Build.iQ catalog. Every time we get a brand new price list from Reese, I go straight in, I archive the old items, and I explode in all the latest prices with the latest, with the effective date. Every time we get a new price list from Bunnings, exactly the same thing. Access insulation, wet seal waterproofing, you name it. Concrete from Boral, it's all in there. It's all postcode matched. So you put the postcode in of the job in this section here, and it will automatically pull in the correct concrete rate for that location. When you're doing your freight charges for, say, garage doors, we pay a varying freight charge to B&D doors for cartage, and it looks at the postcode, and if that postcode has a freight charge, it puts a price in, and if it doesn't, it leaves it at 0. Pretty tricky, eh?
Good one. These items just came from a single explosion, right?
Technically it was one explosion, but I think it was about 7 different recipes.
7 total recipes, yeah.
So all the recipes were exploded, or was it just
all together?
Yes. So each individual RCH is a separate recipe. So we exploded that one.
Okay.
So each individual one of those, and they can all be exploded individually all at once. Doesn't matter.
So the questions.
The questions are hidden inside the items.
Okay. Yeah.
So when you add the standard item into a recipe, it reads through the formulas in all of the items inside that recipe, and it prompts you with those questions. So if you are exploding the standard item by itself only without any of the others, then you probably won't get asked what the total size of the house is, and you won't get asked what the concrete slab type is or any of those other things. You'll only get asked the questions that are nested inside of this. So that's why I was saying when we did that waffle pod M-class slab, we could have actually left that. We could have just left that out and done that after we'd done the reinforcing. But I guess I just wanted to show you how it worked. If it was a more complicated house where the site conditions were very touch and go and I wasn't 100% sure what the engineer was going to specify, then I probably would have erred on the side of caution and just not done this one and just done the ones above it. So by adding all of those in together, it's read all of the questions from each of them. It only asks the question once. So if the question is used 20 times in the same explosion, it only asks you once, and it just keeps referencing back to that answer. And it stores those answers in this section here, which I tend not to delete because I think it's useful in the future. If you ever want to find out what you keyed in or what was different, you can look back here and it's got all your answers.
Variables, right? These are.
Yes.
I was thinking like it was just the explosion of a single recipe. So everything got exploded, right?
Correct.
Altogether.
Yes.
Okay.
And merged in together.
That was the reason why there was too many questions, like.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's why there was so many questions, because we were doing a lot of different explosions all at once. But we've now ended up with pretty much a full working bill of quantities. You know, we now just need to go out and get some quotes, finish off some quantities, mark some things green, check your earthworks, allowances, and pretty much the bill of quantities is done.
So there is no need of manual addition of any items, right? Other than these quotes, right?
No, that's not true. So what explodes is the designer specification. Where things vary from the designer specification, those things need to be contributed to the bill of quantities. So if, for example, this house had a fridge over here, and it had a note on the plan saying cold water point for fridge, then we would come in here on cost center 420 and we'd find that water point and we'd add it. A lot of the standard items will come in, depending on whether it's single story or double story, but there's always going to be things that need to be contributed. What I didn't say to you guys was I was actually scanning each of them on the left-hand side as I was marking them green. Like I was actually, I didn't tell you I was checking, but when I was reading this one here and I was telling you what these items were, I ran my eyes across all those and checked and none of them applied. Yeah, and in some of them, you know, we've got one here for install a letterbox and install a clothesline. So if there is no letterbox or clothesline shown on the plans, no letterbox, no clothesline, nothing here in the addendum. Oh, we do actually, they should be shown on the plans. So we need to go back and we need to add in a clothesline and a letterbox if this is the right job. Bennett. And we ideally should have those added on to, oh, there, it's just hidden under this word. And clotheslines. So we need to come back here to the carpenter and go install letterbox, install clothesline. And then we need to allow for the supply of those letterbox and clothesline. So I'm just going to add a dummy item for the time being just to mark it in red. Just because I've got some other stuff I need to go and do. So we'll finish up the training session here and I'll work on the rest of the bill of quantities, yeah, with Arjun and I guess if you don't have anything else to do, I'll get you to watch in. But this is a large chunk of a bill of quantities underway. You know, once we send out window and door quotes, we check the quotes, and then we put the quote address in, put the price in, job done. We obviously need to go through and get some quotes for some of our door jams and things like that. Gas, you know, we can just mark that off unless there's an additional gas point somewhere on the plan. So we have a look through the addendum. Well, there's one extra hot water system, so we're going to end up with one extra gas point. Extra.
Yeah, there's two hot water system, right? So
That's correct. So the gas rough-in item includes two appliances. So one is the original gas hot water, and the other one is the cooktop. And now we just got to allow an extra point for the extra hot water. I'm really surprised the owners haven't opted to put a gas connection point on their alfresco somewhere. I'd strongly encourage they do, because it seems like the perfect alfresco for an outdoor barbecue. But we haven't been instructed to do that. It's not in the contract. It's not on the plans. For all intents and purposes, that cost center's done. Just putting through a couple of supply. Yeah. It's actually probably going to end up being starts. So that's the explosion process. That's how it comes in, and then all we do is we just start going through, checking each one of these cost centers, checking the items on the left-hand side, seeing if anything applies. If it does, add it in, add its quantity. Once it's done, mark it green.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that was good. Like, just good.
All right. I'm going to go have some lunch and plan what I'm doing the rest of the day, because I'm getting bombarded by emails. Arjun,
Yeah.
please stay out of the job. We will work on this together separately.
Yeah, sure.
After this. So there's no point doing anything more on it until such time as Cameron gives us the all clear to send quote requests. At that point in time, we know the plans will be final, and then we can start going through and actually tidying up some more of these cost centers. And of course, I'll record that training session as well, so it's useful for everybody after the fact. So essentially just kind of leave this where it's sitting for the time being, and we'll circle back as we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once we've got the color selection.
So we are not going to send in any quotes, right? So what about the roof?
Correct.
What about the roofing and the windows?
We're just going to leave them sitting in there as blanks for the time being.
Okay.
They're just a quantity of one. That's all it is. Quantity of one waiting on a quote. So until Cameron gives us the approval to issue those quote requests, they're just going to have to sit there blank, waiting to send quotes.
Oh, cool.
Not much more we can do.
So like in all these cost centers, like instead of adding these supplies, like since these are pretty basic to each cost centers, like can we have any pre-programmed things that add in the suppliers actually?
Build.iQ doesn't have that ability yet.
Okay. Oh, it's in the development stage, so it will be having one.
So I specifically asked if there was a way that I could create a template job and copy suppliers. But you'll see here that there's actually no function to include suppliers in the copy function. All it does is copy quantities. So I've asked them to attend to that in the future, so I could kind of create a template job called, template suppliers, and then you could bring them over and from the start, and then add your items afterwards. But they kind of haven't really seen it as a priority. I mean, if you guys bitch, maybe they will.
Because that's really important, because it would save a lot of time actually.
Yes, it would save a little bit of time. It's probably only 5 or 10 minutes, but it's still helpful in the general scheme of things. All right, well, I'm going to call it and go and have some lunch and hide from this wind. And yep.
What do you want me to do now, like in the next job or anything else?
I'm going to have some lunch, and then we're going to send a quote request on a job, and I'll record that and then send it through to Arjun. So go and do something for a little while. Go read some stuff, have a look at the Excel files.
like I was asking like what should I do in the next job. Like I was almost done with that Excel sheet. Like we were having a comparison yesterday,
Yeah,
and
we do.
For this job.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what did you guys find? How did you find your quantities varied from mine?
yeah, there was some differences in the brick quantities, but like since we had your measurements, like we were having a check where we went wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Okay.
it was good.
Did you just
Mm,
work that out? Are you now
Yeah.
confident?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
first we worked it out, and then we had a comparison, so we could find our mistakes.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So what I would like you to do is to go to the job SWS14.
Like, let me just note it down.
Would you like me to just message it to you?
SWS
140036. So that's the Southwest Sydney project that we did the screen share on the other week, where we did the takeoff. It was the one with the lower garage, had the deepened
Okay.
edge beam. I'd like you to jump onto it and familiarize yourself generally with the plans, and to go into the contracts folder and have a look and make sure all the files are all named correctly, and just generally have a read of the addendum A. So find the addendum A, read it, familiarize yourself with the scope, because we'll be sending quotations on it after lunch.
Oh, cool. SWS 14006, right?
Correct. So that's in the Southwest Sydney database.
So Southwest Sydney, right? Cool.
Yeah.
And will you be doing the rest of the job today?
No, definitely not.
No, right?
No,
Okay.
no. This could sit for another 2 weeks.
Okay.
Until Cameron gets the approval from the design department that they're going to allow the house we've proposed to be built as is. Until he gives us that approval, we can't send quote requests, and so there's no point spending any more time on it.
Yeah, I'll have a go through it, and I'll do some recipe explosion in the test job. Yeah.
Yeah. Feel free.
Yeah.
Yep.
All
Create
right.
as many test jobs as you like, and explode to your heart's content.
Yeah. All right.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bye.
See you, Shane. Bye.